Okay. I'm basically an engineer physicist. I have a degree from the University of Tampa in Bachelor of Science Electrical Engineering. I have a Master's of Science in Physics, and I have a PhD from United Universities in quantum electrodynamics, which is quantum electronics. Now, for years and years, I also had an interest in paranormal stuff because it expresses the quantum world. It is believed today that paranormal activity is man operating through the many different reference frames or dimensionalities that we couple to in the non-physical mind. So, I've had to marry the two together. And up to about 2003, 2004, I was a technologist. I retired from that, although I still do jobs in that field of different technologies, and I'm now basically a spiritualist. I've acknowledged my Native American background, and I'm basically a shaman. I'm known as the technical musical shaman for the modern age. And that's where I am.
Well, that's sort of where I wound up, too. So we're still on the same path from back in 1968. I was in Montauk myself there, so we'll have to compare notes. But let me let Janet introduce herself. And, Janet, you want to say hi to Preston?
Yeah, hi, Preston. We talked earlier today. I was running errands and getting back here in time, and there were a couple things that we were talking about on the show today, the age regression, and I forget what the second one was, but we'll get back to that. I did want to touch briefly on, while you guys were trying to reconnect, TJ was saying that, was reading something, or I don't know what you were getting. You were talking about, TJ was talking about your background, Preston, and she uncovered that you had been at Montauk in 1968 together. Do you, either of you remember meeting each other?
No, I don't. I didn't come out to Montauk until about 1973.
Oh, okay. So you weren't there yet.
No,
so TJ had been there in 68. And the other thing we were talking about is the music. I read your book, The Music Through Time, but that was about 10 years ago, so I wish I would have reread it. That would be fresh. And TJ has a very interesting piece that she recorded. Can you explain your recording? Because before we started this show tonight, and TJ and I were talking before it came on, she was playing this music that she recorded, which is very kind of spacey. And do you have a sample of your music? And I wonder if they're similar in any way.
No, I was basically in the 60s rock and roll field.
Mm-hmm.
Up to a point where if a professional rock band came into New York, they wanted to make a recording at a recording studio known as Bell Sound, which was owned and run by Phil Spector, and I was like the chief engineer at Bell Sound.
Oh, my gosh, you worked with Phil Spector. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I did work with that madman.
Well,
he's
how about
a madman and a genius at the same time.
Well, I'm called the mad woman sometimes. At least that's what Phyllis Galdi called me today, so that's interesting that you're talking about the madman Phil Spector. How about that? So you were his musical genius, the engineer, the man with the... I love my engineers. I'm still in music myself, and I love my engineers. I tell them it's really those engineers that help make my CDs what they are today, you know. And so Phil Spector, the engineering genius, is Preston Nichols. Now, is that your legal name?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
At that time, I was known as Little Buddha. You ever heard of Little Buddha? That's probably me.
Yes. Well, what years were you there? Because I thought you were with me in 1968. I thought you worked with Montauk. I wonder where I got that from. And I swear in my brain it was, I had you as part of the Swerdlow energy. I wonder why. How old would you have been in 1968?
22.
And where were you located? Were you doing music, rock band music with Phil Spector in '68?
Yes, I was.
That's odd.
And,
And that was in New York City?
in '69, I went to work at Brookhaven National Labs
Uh-huh.
while I was teaching school at the local college.
Okay, well, we sure need to get your timeline
So, TJ,
down.
do you want to describe to Preston what happened when you were called to the Montauk project, and maybe that'll shed some light?
Well,
You
I
weren't
was
there full time. You were just called in as a consultant. Is that correct?
Well, I was only 16. My husband, Preston, in 1968 worked at NASA in Houston, Texas, and his father transferred with Grumman. I don't know if you remember Montauk area, but we had a classified area up there working on Air Force spacecraft, etc. Are you familiar with Montauk Point? I thought you were part of that for some reason. I'm not usually wrong, but anyway, I went up there and I was met a little boy about 6 or 7. I take to be Andrew Basciago because his dad worked for the intelligence agency, and I was up there about 2.5 or 3 months, and I was working with people because I believed in extraterrestrials in NASA and had a secret behind-the-wall classification. They'd already done my paperwork from '67 with the government, and then had a clearance through NASA, even though I was just the wife of an engineer that Steve Parrish worked at NASA. He's now deceased, but he was there for most of the Apollo missions, if you're familiar with them. But I knew all the astronauts. They drove the gold Corvettes with the black bat wings, and I went to see 2001 Space Odyssey with them, and it was a really good time back then. And however, when I went to Montauk, which is what I guess Janet was wanting us to collaborate with and find out how our music works together, is I was into the 60s music. I have to be honest, I was right where you are. I had no clue about this music she's talking about that we created up here where I am in about 2004 or 5. But she's looking for some type of thread or path, and she puts people together. And I think what she wants you to know is that it's my interpretation and belief that they had taken the chair from an exploded spacecraft in Roswell, New Mexico, from our 47 experience up there into Montauk. And then I have 2 timelines we can get into later once you introduce what you're all about. My timelines were between 1943 and 68, which was a 25-year difference. Like a hole opened up. At the same time, the Philadelphia experiment had been going on with a 50-year separation. So I guess since you probably didn't hear the show, it's hard for me to go into because it gets pretty splintered there. But I was trying to help fix the situation that I guess because of the timelines, what we did was bent time, like using light refraction, and we were trying to understand how physics probed the 5th dimension in space-time continuum. And we already knew about the 3 dimensions, and we used space as the 4th dimension, which was like time, or so we called it space-time. And it got rather murky. And what happened is we had 2 light fractals, I guess one would say, directions crossover, and we had a double timeline like a wormhole effect open up at 25 and a 50-year increment. And where they crossed over, it's like the soul or the cross, and the rose of the soul is the rose and the body is the cross, like we do in Rosicrucians. They crossed over.
Terminology.
Huh?
Well, in '68, I was at Brookhaven Lab, which eventually joined with what was then in '68 Fort Hero, which was a Montauk point base, which the Montauk radar station was part of. At that time, that was doing MK Ultra work. They had all those strange buildings out there with the weird rooms. They had the Timothy Leary rooms, and they were doing all sorts of drug research out there. And then in around 72 is when the whole thing turned over to the idea of electromagnetic mind interfacing and functioning. And that's when I got involved with Montauk.
Okay, so now we're getting down. Okay, so now you're talking about things I wasn't familiar with. I was working, so in my mind's eye, there's various points. So you could have been physically there as a point of contact for a point hero with MK Ultra. But I wasn't in those weird rooms. I was in like what's called a jump room. I guess is what the kids call it today, for lack of better words. But we had things going on with mind too, mind control. But it was learning to work with computers and also with space travel, like with Grumman, our classified aircraft. And who else was on here that worked on aircraft? But anyway, so all of that going together, it supposedly had, now my part in one of the crazy rooms, I guess you'd say maybe they were called MK Ultra, but I thought it was Project Pegasus. Have you ever heard of Project Pegasus?
I've heard of it from the popular net connections, but before that, I've never heard of Project Pegasus.
But you've heard of Philadelphia Experiment.
From what I knew, that whole Montauk setup was known as Project Red Hawk, part of the CIA Avery works.
Oh, really? Well, see, I wouldn't have been told all that. That would have been people that were adults, and I was only 16. All I know is I was into telepathy, parapsychology, and UFOs, and back then we had a group that was like MUFON, but MUFON hadn't been created yet. And we were meeting secretly in NASA, and I was the little kid with all the mumbo-jumbo, booga-booga, kind of stuff that they could believe in, but they didn't know how it worked. So I got to go up there and play with some minds because I had some special understanding that they couldn't figure out. Scientists and engineers just sort of scratched their head trying to figure out what's what. But they were trying to use, I guess, sort of what you use now. They were trying to use energy and space and time and how it worked with something similar probably to DARPA HARPs. Was DARPA involved then or not? Do you remember, or was it just strictly the government with the military?
Well, DARPA had a connection because I was working with DARPA at Brookhaven Lab in the late 60s. But what you're describing is more like the Montauk Project.
Was it called?
Montauk Project.
Is that like the butterfly monarch? Are you saying MONAR? Okay, now I'm familiar with that. So you think that was the name of it. But I didn't know what it meant.
As a kid, you probably would have been in the Montauk Project, which was a secondary to the MK Ultra at that time. The Montauk Project goes back to before World War II, training basically programmed soldiers. There, what they would do is split the mind up by whatever means they could use. A lot of times they use brutality to shatter the mind, and they program each piece to do something different. Then they put it back together. There was a Manchurian Candidate business, is what they were working with. And at times there was quite
gruesome. I've seen movies about that, but I was just working psychically, like a psychic. What the CIA would later call me a psychic, with transcendental meditation and reading other people. But you read for, but I don't remember. Monarch Project I remember because the big butterfly, and I still use it today. My daughter and I both love butterflies. I've got a Pegasus tattoo, but I don't have a butterfly. I've got a rainbow. I don't see a butterfly. No, if it's not on my leg, then the ones that are, I have tattoos for the various projects I've worked on. There's no tattoo, so apparently I wasn't told what I was working on. You know, I mean, I don't have any acknowledgement in my brain.
Preston, they didn't tell people that were in the Monarch program that they were in the Monarch program. Is that true?
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
That's very true.
Right. So you wouldn't know, but that was just one of the programs that they were. So how do you uncover that if you were part of that? Is there any way of uncovering your programming?
Me or him?
Buddy,
let him talk. He was the adult. I was 16.
Preston, let's go back to you. Let's back up a little bit. Preston, what would you like to talk about? Everybody's fascinated with Montauk. I know you probably feel that you've covered it over and over, and yet there's so many mysteries for us out here, you know, about what really happened there. And but this is just an offshoot of, or this is the beginning of where you are now. So you've taken and you've gone way beyond that. Do you want to explain to our listening audience a little bit about where you are now and your projects that you have?
Well, right now at this point, metaphysically, I'm using the science of electronics and sound to reproduce what I call full spectrum music, which goes from extreme deep bass all the way out to extreme treble response. But it's being generated by vacuum tubes. It also has a parallel reality aspect because the tube, the way I bias the different elements, it generates what we call a quantum well, which is an effect of crossing all the parallel reference frames. And in some of those reference frames, the signal flow reverses. So you get an actual feedback between the listener's mind and the quantum aspects of the vacuum tube, and it acts as a mind amplifier, so to speak. And if you know how to use it, you can go anywhere with it. That's what I'm working with now. This is what I'm using to do my shamanistic work. So to go retrieve pieces of the soul, help people break out of programming. You know, it's many faceted. It would need a couple of nights to explain the whole thing. You know, going from the age regression aspect to the pure meditation. All I advertise is I do musical meditation or musical vision questing if you're in the Native American side like I am.
So how does this work? Can you kind of explain to us what we're looking at? What does the mechanism look like?
Well, the mechanism fills this room, and there's electronic equipment all around the room. There's a bed in the middle of it, you know, a reclining couch-type bed. And basically the bed vibrates. Here, let me shut this off.
Okay.
Oh, Janet, that's the same thing I told you Dr. Laura Sturgis has when I went on that vision quest and came back as a dolphin. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, so
it's
she
the same
has
thing.
a mechanism that you sit in or something?
Yeah, there's various. Yeah, she had a bed that vibrates. It was called a, shoot. Now I've forgotten the name of it. I want to say Vibrasound is what I want to say. Vibrasound. Yeah. Yeah, have you heard of Vibrasound?
Tell us about what yours is like. Are you there, Preston?
Yeah, my cell phone keeps ringing. So
You're a popular man.
Okay, what you're talking of is what's called a Native American vision questing bed.
Ah.
It uses very special vibrators that vibrate at 19.8 hertz. And with little modification, they can be made to do some wild things. I have the same thing sitting here, you know, the vibrating bed, but I also couple the bass response of the music into the vibrating bed. I have people come up here and experience musical meditation. That's what we call it, because I really cannot make any medical claims. We cannot say it heals.
Right. Okay.
But the healing aspects of music is very well known and acknowledged by the medical profession. They like to use music therapy as an adjunct to people healing after surgery, and so if they're very sick, you can use musical meditation to help curb the sickness and make the symptoms go away, and eventually it may even make the actual sickness go away. We really don't know what the actual power of music is as far as it relates to health. But to do this, you got to get down into the very deep bass note range. Your average sound system that you buy is not going to do it. But you got to take the frequency response of that bass down to about 5 hertz, and you got to be able to transduce it directly into the body. And you have to build the quantum sound field up to about 25 kilohertz. I have special processing on my CD players that do that. And, I have like 2,000 watts of bass sound in the room with 1,000 watts of it coupled directly into the bed. And what the shakers have the effect of amplifying it. I had to repair the shakers because when I got this bed, I got it for free because all the motors were seized, so I had to take apart the remote.
You got the Vibrasound free? Because we used them back 25 or 30 years ago in Hawaii, but they were expensive, like $5,000 back then.
That's
only
what
had,
I was told.
I can't believe you got one like free.
Yeah, well, tell us what happened. Go ahead.
The reason I got it for free is all 4 motors, and it was seized solid. I had to take them apart and rebuild them. And then I realized the shaker motors are very close to that famous Tesla shaker patent. So I modified them to do what that Tesla shaker did, where they shook Manhattan with it.
Yeah.
And Trent will tell you the effect is fantastic.
Oh, God, yeah. It's just absolutely amazing. It really is a resurrection.
Yeah.
Kind of, I think it just eliminates anything that's not a natural pattern. It leaves that which was meant to be, and the rest is shaken off. And what was meant to be, it's like creating a resonance in water or water crystal. You look at Emoto's crystals that come back into reformation. So it's just beyond vocabularizing the experience of.
I've had them. I've had them with some brilliant music 25 or 30 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. That was some of my best Vision Quest. The music did change, and that's how I wound up writing this music, Janet, was based on the fact that...
The key is somewhere in this 2 hours tonight, I'd like you to play your music for Preston, because, and then I was wondering, Preston, if you're able to play music on your side.
Oh, she wants to hear your music compared to my music. See, we both come from the same school. We're walking the same path as shamans. So we're doing Vision Quest healing with music.
Well, I was going to add to this. I just described the subsonics. Now, on top of this, we have the vacuum tube amplifiers, which I've thoroughly modeled on the electronic and the quantum level. Being a quantum electronics expert, I've maximized the effects that people talk about that vacuum tubes sound better than solid-state devices, and you're laying literally inside the music because the amplifiers are sampling you and crossing you with the musical energies and presenting you with a form that is perfectly synchronous to you. And you can literally slip right into the music. And then from there, you can launch yourself out any way you want to go mentally. And that's what this is about. I've had Native American people come down here from the Turning Stone. We have a recording called Sacred Indian Drums, which is based upon the idea of they have this sling in the Cherokee Reservation that you lay in, and then they put 8 sets of drums around you, and the drummers basically drum to the point where this whole hammock you're laying in is vibrating. That's what the Sacred Indian Drums recording is based on, and one of the fellows that performed it said, I got right down to that basic level, and my setup here is better than what they do live at the Cherokee Reservation.
What kind of speakers are you using?
Okay, the mid-range and treble is my own design.
Yeah.
You know, just about everything is my own design. I have 4 speaker systems sitting on top of the bass boxes. They're driven by, each speaker system is driven by a vacuum tube amplifier based upon my quantum well design. The bass is, about 4,000 watts of solid-state amplifiers driving 3 18-inch subwoofers, 2 15-inch subwoofers that drive the bed, and 4 12-inch subwoofers. And I have special integration processes, and I have also a processor built into the CD player system that makes the CD sound like the original analog recordings, aka it corrects the phase distortion due to a low sampling rate. Well, in the CD player, so it sounds like the original analog master tape. And then what I had to do was I had to solve a 10th order differential equation, which is a combination of the equations for the microphones, the amplifiers, and the speakers. And from that, I got the coefficients for further processing that would literally almost erase completely the distortion from the speakers and the microphones.
Well, that's good.
So,
are you using any? So are you full blast? Do you have a muffler room at all? Do you have any padding or anything on the walls, or do you just strictly use it in whatever room you're in? Or did you create you a special sound room?
No, it's not needed because the quantum effect generates a matrix that recreates the instruments on the original soundstage in your live recordings. And it literally creates 3-dimensional sound images.
Okay, well, I think now, are you using any keyboards or strictly drums? Because I love drumming, and I know that's always been the way, that the ancients used, even in Stonehenge or whatever. You've seen those films. But drumming is very close to the heart in talking with the heart chakra. But I think where you and I are going together on this journey that Janet's brought us together on is possibly working with how sound bends through space-time in the various other dimensions, just like how the walls came tumbling down at Jericho with sound. The biblical concept is, because that's what we were working on 25 or 30 years ago with the Expo, and the vibra sounds were really big. But I didn't know what happened to the path of them because I didn't stay with it. But Janet has Dr. Laura Sturgis. She probably still has one. She had the sound room with all the equipment, and the New Age music would just blow me away. But I had one similar that I could play, but it took me to a spaceship, and it also took, the one she played took me on, you close your eyes. You didn't have to go into a hypnotic state. You just laid on the vibrasound bed, and you put the headphones on if you wanted, or you could just listen in the room. And they turned, we didn't have computers so much back then, but we had real fancy gadgets and stuff to run our sound equipment in Hawaii. So she had one of 2 on the island. I was going to buy the other one, and then I got transferred to the mainland. But there was only 2. I went and looked at it. We had spiritual meetings at this place. So you have one now, and you're using it. Are you working on the 3D universe and the brains at all for subatomic particles? When you bring in... go ahead.
Preston's run out for a second just to use the men's room there. Okay. Yeah, he really atomizes off your mind field so that it goes into the amplifiers, too. He's found certain tubes, what they call the, I can't think of the name. They were the KT tubes developed in Britain, where the signals cross creates a quantum well, an input well. You might call it a mini jump room, in your terminology, so that literally your frequency that's individually you it's allowed to be put onto the signal and modulated. So, of course, when
Yeah.
that comes up, your part of the music, it again picks up the field effect from yourself, the frequency
Yeah, we
that
call
you're
it the
generating.
chrysalis effect.
And,
Have you heard
and,
the word chrysalis?
No, I hadn't heard it. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's like a cocoon going to a butterfly. It's basically what all these people in New Age have been doing for 25 or 30 years with sound and vibration and vibrasound,
Right.
all that. It's
It
metamorphosized.
generates that, but the it puts you in that type of cocoon. But unlike some of the say the beds that we tune are secret agents that just take off your signals and put them back in, it allows you to be the what modulates the sound, if you will.
Well, now this was government experiments, even when Dr. Sturgis was doing it, because I remember she had a government guy. I told Janet all about this. Maybe not have done it on the radio, but yeah, it took me. I found out one of my past lives as a dolphin. I was swimming with the dolphins, and they almost didn't. Oh, that wasn't Janet. That was with Brad Bray. That was the other radio guy.
I spent some time with a black leopard today while I was on the bed, but. I knew
so you know what I'm talking
I knew
about,
that
right?
particular black leopard is a shapeshifter from a race of beings that are unlimited geometric patterns. Their whole communication
that's my
form.
power animal, black leopard.
Yeah, it's where that's interesting because myself and a shaman sister share that in common too. This one,
oh my gosh,
the race of shapeshifters comes from frequency patterns, and now we see them as frequency patterns, but in the other dimensions. Matter of fact, Preston can mention some bit about the shapeshifters, but
well, when I was doing this, and when I was doing it, most of my friends were in the Bear Clan, the Shaman Bear Clan. You remember back in 25 or 30 years ago, they were all using the Find Your Power Animal cards because we were in Tarot and all that.
Yeah, you're getting big nods from Preston on that. I know my own work with the Clan of the Hawk up in northern Vermont. I've had a lot of the Bear Clan members clandestinely come up and spend some time after midnight with me.
Well,
so
tell him that I was
back over
always
Preston
okay.
there.
Okay, good. Well, I shouldn't say good.
Sorry.
Hey, Preston.
I can tell you, girls, a very interesting story about the Bear Clan.
Okay. Tell us a story.
About 4 years ago, I was working outside, and I hear this noise behind me. I turn around. It's a bear. The bear is sitting there holding its paw out, and it's got a nail in its paw. So I pull the nail out, and then it turns around and shows me another nail in its side. Eventually, I pull 3 nails out of this creature, and then it walks off. It was very friendly, actually.
Now, where was this in physical reality, 3D reality, or were you on the bed? Oh, this is in 3D.
This is in physical reality out in my yard.
Oh, my gosh. I've never heard anybody say that. He had 3 nails in his foot?
Forget. Let me finish the story.
Yes.
And that story happened. This was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 6 o'clock that night, comes a knock at the door. I open the door, and it's this naked guy standing there. So, I have no trouble with naked people. And he said he wanted to talk to me in almost like a very simple, broken English. So, yeah, come on in. The guy tells me he was this bear.
Oh.
In fact, he was tooling around up the hill, and somebody shot him with a nail gun.
Oh.
And up to the point I had the live-in visitor, my cousin, the shapeshifters were coming over almost every night, and we were going over what this shapeshifting is about. And what I actually learned, these creatures have about 6 or 7 different DNA patterns in master cell clusters, which when they concentrate, they can shift themselves in any of these, these DNA patterns. And they will literally shift to this other creature.
Right.
We
We can do that with a lot of things. but we're starting to teach that now.
Well, go ahead.
And this got me to realize that what I was seeing when I would work through the Montauk boys using sexual magic, I was seeing their non-physical energy lattice pattern for their DNA. And the shapeshifters were able to shift between DNA patterns. And I'm still trying to figure how to bring the DNA pattern to the surface and use it to superimpose over the entire body and correct the DNA distortion. You know, I'm working on that heavily. I'm having
Well, that's how we got
with
into this problem with Philadelphia. See what you're talking about is one of those rooms I was working in. Now I see how it all goes together, how these vibrasound beds came to be. Everybody started trying to commercialize what they already knew about in part. So, see, you're going to have to explain what all you were doing now. Now you got me curious, because this is part of the thing Janet's working on with this other girl. They're going to do another conference. You and me are going to have to be there. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, we have to get everybody together. So let me. So you're trying to repattern based on this technology, so people can regenerate and go back to their youthful selves, which probably would have, a healing effect because aging creates disease. And so going back to you were saying something about the women would be about 20 and the men 25 if this works, and how close are you to achieving this?
Well, that's the peak of your physical development.
Right,
At
right.
that point, each time the cells divide, the DNA degrades something. It's like making a copy of a copy of a copy. Eventually, the copy doesn't look like the original at all. And we're supposed to go into this state, which is something like a full-body orgasm that the tantric people talk of, where you bring this pattern to the surface, you go into this orgasmic-like state, and the currents distribute this over every cell in the body. The DNA opens, and the patterns correct the distortion in the DNA, because this physical mind pattern is perfect for what you had for the men at 25 years of age. And, of course, this work is not socially acceptable. This work is among taboos in the Western world, Eastern world. I don't think they think anything of it. So I basically have to do it behind closed doors, and I'm not progressing fast. And I figure the oldest age for me, men, who you can do this with is about 70. But once you go beyond 70, the degradation is so bad that it actually reflects back into a non-physical DNA pattern. And I'm 66 right now, so I got about 4 years to pull the rabbit out of the hat. And I need people to work with on this, because I don't have much money, and I can't hire a bunch of young fellows, throw a bunch of money at them, and they do it, and I learn what the secret is. So
well, it has to do with water. I'll be honest with you. It has to do with water, and so you're on the right track, and it has to do with light refraction and sound. You can't just do it with the bed and the music. You've got to have all 4 ingredients.
Well,
You've got to have wind helps too.
One at a time. So go ahead.
I was going to say that the background ethers is a non-physical form of water. So you've got the water coming in through the quantum well. And light, of course, light, electrons, any of those trons are a wavicle. That's why it's called light science.
Yeah.
Because it's a wave on the some aspects and it's a particle on the some aspects. So basically, the equipment is projecting the non-physical form of water, and it's also projecting light based upon the frequency patterns of the listener and the frequency patterns of the music being put into it. So we have all those aspects. And then since I had to hit a new CD player, I had to shut down the light show. I got to get that bucket back up and running. So above the bed, we have a very special form of light where the actual light is modulated up and down with the frequencies of the music, which was another input network, input. And the LEDs, which is actually a tunnel diode, the LEDs also produce whatever this quantum energy is, modulations in the background ether.
Well, you got the light show.
Where are you coming up with your information about what is necessary to make this happen?
What'd you say? What'd you say?
TJ, you were saying that you need to have light and water and stuff like that. Where are you getting your information? Is this part of your research?
Yeah, I've been working on this. I've been working with this, but I just work with people. I just always know things, Janet. I mean, from my past lives, but also because we're working, government wants to know all this stuff because they're working on it already. They've already got all this stuff. And what he's doing is the same stuff that just leaked out from the government 25 or 30 years ago. But the thing is, Preston is like me and you. He's just down here in the trenches with the people doing it. See, the government always wants to know any kind of intelligence that we accumulate on our own because that's how they make their profit, right? They want to control. So it's control factor. He's not going to be able to get funding for what he's doing because he's too close to what they've already been working on for 50 or 60 years from 68 forward. They were working on it then.
Right.
But they already use all that with everything together. That's how we got the Philadelphia, the hole in time, and that's what we were trying to do is fix it. But the whole thing that a lot of people are getting confused is in the spiritual world is the Tantra element versus it doesn't have to be sexual orgasms. It just has to be understood how one uses their energy and how it's affected with moods and ambitions from the music and the lights. Because people in neuroscience, you can throw somebody into an epileptic seizure. And that we had closed down a lot of the red lights in neuroscience and parapsychology. But he's like me. He's on the same track, Janet. In other words, the same journey path, the same background. It's just in the same vibra sound. Everything, we're both doing the same stuff. You just have to get us all working together on the poor man's string. Right, Preston, you need people that are doing what you're doing together as a team, and everybody pool their money together if you want to do it for the poor people, because the government's not going to let you get funded, unless you give it to them.
I don't think, Preston, you're looking for government funding, right? You're just
no, we're looking
on your own.
Again, looking for a sponsorship and enough money to continue forward, especially in some of the unusual aspects of pulling in 10, 11, 12 dimensions. That way, with a real understanding of the crossover and the where the patterns come together. And that's for instance, I notice on a number of Preston speaker systems, he has 21 speakers in a triangular shape. Well, that has meaning right there. And the sacred geometric patterns of the wires and the amplifiers that bring in, the right angle turns that in the quantum field are something you have to have a special ability to read. And although the government can attempt to use people that have that ability, it's not the same as when they move forward with heart and ambition in agreement with something larger, in agreement with a harmony. That's what's being supported in the light workers right now, is those people with heart. And that goes beyond the technical aspects of it, what intention you're allowed to put into it.
Well, yeah, that's the Emerald Tablets. It's all in the Emerald Tablets. It's already been written. It just needs to be, if we're allowed to show the 10th, 11th, 12th, you count yourself, and you've got 12 dimensions plus yourself, right? So
and
that makes 13.
The amplifier is the sacred geometry and just the wiring between the components. And the bundling is more the act of a woman caring for a child in the way she bundles them up than it is something that can be perceived from a technician's point of view. That's where the shaman comes in. They can see the fields, sense them around the wires, and even charge them. You're kind of getting into the some of the free-ended stuff Bearden used to talk about. Open-ended possibilities, and then non-loopback, pumping the ether, as he used to say, because as you know, if you hold can continue in inductance and you stop electrics and then stop magnetics while the pulse of the inductance is still going on, you start to pump time and gravity, and that takes an agreement from the shaman's world, which you just can't enter and successfully stay there if you're creating a Death Star kind of thing, So
that's how we got in trouble in the first place with Atlantis. That's why what I'm working on is the new Atlantis. But so you have to find people in the right harmony in order to move forward, because I'm always having to be one step ahead of the government, and that's not easy because they want everything that you create. But see, Harvard University, all these universities that I have on my website, they all work together in CERN's laboratories, and what I started out was LIGO, which is the Livingston, the new gravitational physics. So see, all these universities and the government are working on exactly this. You know what I'm saying? And they realize that the graphic patterns dealing with 11th and 12th dimensions is what it's all about, too. So they're trying to prove the bubble. Have you heard about the new bubble theories and the two subatomic particles coming together embedded in a 3D universe? And they call it a brain. The collision produces particles, and then they bubble up and make one in the extra-dimensional bulk. So that's sort of what we're talking about when you do. In other words, we're talking about exactly what they're talking about, but we talk about it in shamanic healing of the heart and changing, which only takes one chromosome difference, which I know how to do. But not everybody knows how to do it.
I wanted to for something else Preston mentioned on the phone with me before we came on the show about the computer that controls the realities. Is Preston available for that discussion?
Yeah. Let him explain that here for a few minutes, because that's really important. And I just wanted to comment that from a shamanistic point of view, from what we label, for lack of a better term, shamanistic or orgasmic stuff, we're doing what they're working on. But let Preston jump in on this the computer simulation we are, and give him a few minutes to explain it here.
Great.
Well, we should probably go into the background of how I found this out. Shall I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
you got the floor, Preston. Take it away. We're going to let you talk for a few minutes uninterrupted.
Okay, for a number of years, I've been visited by this guy who said he was Preston of the future. I checked his fingerprints, I checked his DNA, it was a perfect match. One of the visits, he hands me a CD, and he says the Justin Hayward recording of Broken Dreams on this CD was recorded in the future, and that strange droning noise at the end is when the galactic superwave hits Earth and dissolves everything. And I asked him, well, how did you get the recording? He says, I'm not going any further into that. So I played that recording, and I heard the droning. Well, I did. I vision quested into that drone noise, and I found myself at the center of the galaxy. I had encountered this, what looked like a torus, a vortex, with a black hole and a white hole, with the white hole coupling into the black hole. And I realized from quantum physics, this would generate an infinite energy function and an infinite dynamic. and from quantum physics, multidimensional quantum physics, we know that the dynamic coupled with an energy field generates intelligence. So I was sitting there, or standing there, whatever you want to call it, mentally, looking at this extreme high intelligence. Now, after conversing with this extreme high intelligence, I saw a TV program that literally painted a picture that this reality we exist in is a computer simulation that has all the aspects of a computer display, including the blinking on and off very fast on the reality level. Our reality does not flow smooth; it goes in jumps. And they have detected scanning of solid objects, scan lines in the solid objects. And when I heard this, I said, that might be true because the voice of this critter is mechanical. So I asked the critter, introduced himself to me when I encountered him as Tabor. And I said, are you coming out of a supercomputer? He says, yes, I am. The computer is known as Cytros. So basically, we are living in a projected reality from a supercomputer. From what I've heard from these creatures, there's two of them out there, one known as Ra, one known as Tabor. You can reach Tabor through the music known as Mob Lost by Bedrich Smetana. In fact, one section of that is called Tabor the Great. And there are other pieces of music. I first reached the critter Ra through Richard Rogers' Victory at Sea that I have a strange connection to. And where we're going, I'm not sure at this point. This is basically what I discovered. Now, the question you were saying, where I learned this information about sound, light, vibration, I learned it from Tabor, basically. After I worked with Tabor, I was able to put together a 10th order differential equation, solve it, and that's how I came up with the information from Tabor, which I don't think exists before this time now. I was able to optimize this system to get to the level we're working at. Okay, take it away.
You just take it away like Janet and I do. Take it away.
Yeah, take it away.
Yeah. Well, now working in the various dimensions, to be honest with you, shamans have been doing that for years. Some of them use ayahuasca. Some of them use alternative realities to do basically the same, and that is to see the matrix. But there's plenty of people working on this and have been. I know several people that work on the same projects, but they're only allowed to get so far. So the missing ingredient depends on each person's prior past lives and DNA sequencing and what they bring here. It's in the Thoth Emerald tablets. So I strongly recommend, Preston, you may want to read up on that if you're not familiar with it. Read it 100 times. It will help you. If you're not up on that. But that will help your shamanistic behavior. Are you familiar with all your past lives already? Have you put them together, your spiritual past, reincarnation?
Yeah, I have. Yes, I have.
How many have you put together thus far for yourself?
On this planet, I've had one past life as Peter Tchaikovsky. That's probably my musical talent.
Yeah.
Before that, I was on the planet known as Alderaan, like out of Star Wars, in the Pleiadian Alliance. It's around the sixth sister star in the Pleiades constellation.
A lot of people use those terms for the start. It's a level of consciousness in the game, with the various levels of the game in the Matrix. So they call it the Galactic Federation. I use the Andromeda myself. You use Pleiadian. And Pleiadian, I guess you could say I've visited many, many times. So it just depends on what level of the game you're playing, just like we have simulations now. But you know how we teach our children with computers now, right? The children. so they're just programming them inside the program to reach the higher levels in the program of the 3D universe, but they're teaching them about the brain levels and the gravitons that escape from the brain. So that's the extra-dimensional bulk that they're just now trying to prove, which is rather exotic thinking with dark matter and the gravitational waves and cosmic inflation. Now, on the super high energy particle collisions and that we're using with the ultra-powerful gamma bursts, that's what they're trying to do and get a larger hadron collider so they can prove what people like you and me and shamans have done. But we don't. The old path was just bringing up the energy through the chakras, and then the other thing was Vision Quest, which you know and you use in your Indian training, right? Because I am Shoshone Cherokee. What's your Indian faith? Did you tell me? Was it Potawatomi?
Oh.
Your Indian blood?
Let's not put that out over the air.
Oh, you don't know it, or whatever. Well, we're all one and the same anyway in the light patterns. But most of them that work in the Indian shaman group always claim their bloodline, but they don't care because we're all one and the same now. If you go with the golden light eagle energy, you know, in the Pleiadian group and the star nations, that's why I was asking. But anyway, not a problem. So you're basically just trying to work scientifically engineering with your shaman work, blending it together, which is good.
Well, I basically go with the Thunderbird. I go with that because when I first moved up here, the Thunderbird landed on my property and left tracks in the snow. I got pictures of the bird tracks that are 2 foot long and 1.5 feet wide, and I showed it to one of the tribal elders, and that's when he said, "You are a shaman, you can't deny it." And then I asked, "Well, what training do I get?" He said, "Work out of your heart. That's it."
Yeah, heart chakra. That's all they usually say, because we're all on our own journey. You know, everyone. So it just depends. All that does is give you a light sequencing pattern when you're working with light refraction. That's the only reason people will ask you that. It's called the arrow effect. You know, the bow and arrow, and your normal bow and arrow that's used through the heart, which stands for your body. So you have an angle of incidence, and then it's like hitting normal. It refracts. You've seen light hit water. So then you bring in the crystallization of the water and how light bends, and it gets more complicated when light bends. So that's why they always ask you what your arrow is. But that's okay because it's no big deal. It's just what I'm trying to do is take quantum physics and put them into shaman language so we can help people listening. Because you know what I'm saying. You start talking 01010101, you're not going to get anywhere. That's why the government can't do it. So basically, I think Janet's on to something. She's always on to threads. And since I started this radio show for Stargate to the Cosmos, I think what we're trying to do is find teams that will work well together based on which thread we're supposed to put together for the brain sequencing, which we're working in 3D reality now. So you're working with the same things I'm doing, which is music and basically vibrasound, I guess you'd say, cosmic inflation, super high energy, and particle collisions, which right now the light workers are training, but they don't know what they're training for. So how do you see explaining it other than Tron or Matrix? You know, we use movies all the time. The latest guy is using the Knowing, and so am I. Have you seen Knowing and the crystalline beings?
No, I just got Knowing. I'm going to watch that. I was wondering, TJ, if you could play that music for Preston and get Preston, if you could give us your feedback on this music, and tell him before you play it what was happening. You recorded it, and you kind of went unconscious, and then you woke up on the floor, and it was recorded or something?
No, you know what channeling is. He's a shaman, or, you know, you talk shaman language. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen, well, he's a musician, too, so not talking in, I had an engineer, Preston, my own engineer, okay, in a sound recording studio, and so he was working. We use Pro Tools. Are you familiar with Pro Tools now?
I really don't work with any of that. I'm from the days of cut and splice tape.
Okay.
Okay, so you were using Pro Tools,
so
and then what happened?
Yeah, he doesn't care about that. All right,
He doesn't care. Go ahead.
We were in a recording. Yeah, we were in a recording studio, and I paid a guy that came in from Oregon to help me, Scott Huckabee from Washington was over visiting, and he was cutting a video over in Hawaii. But anyway, he and I started talking about Hawaii. Believe it or not, Janet, and here Janet is in Hawaii bringing you and me together.
Hawaii, here we go.
So, there's no coincidences, but anyway, I said, well, while you're here, what are you doing now? He said, well, nothing, I'm hanging. I said, well, you want to cut something with me while you're in town? And he said, well, yeah, but I really need some money. I said, well, I'll give you $100, but I get to own the energy because it's just going to be what I've been wanting to do. I want to test something out in me, and I said, you want to just hang like jazz? Of course, it's New Age, and he said, oh, I'm into New Age. I said, okay, well, I'm going to do some of my past lives, and I told him about this vibrosound in Hawaii, Dr. Laura Sturgis. And he knew all about it. He said, okay, so you're trying to come up with something like that. I said, yeah. Some New Age that, would feel good with the music playing while you're doing the vibrosound. It takes you back and, looking for the other levels and how to teach it. I told him I've already died 3 times, and I've already, done a lot of my shaman work. Matter of fact, I've even got the notebook with the shaman names. We drew pictures as shaman. And anyway, it was a shaman trip. But we weren't doing drugs or nothing.
Yeah,
We just
Can we play
jazz.
the music so we can just get Preston's feedback? You were playing it when we started this evening.
Okay.
sequence. It keeps going for 32 minutes.
Stop it and let's back and have a discussion.
Yeah.
All right, good. It was just a sample, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it keeps going where it changes. It sounds totally different every time I go into a different life. Now, here's the funny thing. He was able, without us speaking, telepathically, as I went from one of my past lives into another. When I would do the Egyptian, he would play Egyptian. When I'd do Indian, he would play Indian. All my past lives are on this tape. And it tripped me out. And then he first fell out after we played it. We both were so high, it was like the biggest trip we'd ever been on. And we both had to lay down because what she was talking about, as I explained, we laid down on the floor. Our heads were spinning. And the whole room, and I've done this once before with one other man. He was a drummer. I don't know if it has to be a musician, which was something we can discuss in parapsychology later. But I don't know if it has to be someone that already has the vibratory sequencing or understands music. But we made the room change, which I did in Montauk. In other words, I can change dimensions with the music. And that's
How
what
did the room
Janet
change?
It's you know when you were a little kid and you'd spin the room, or you'd spin yourself?
Right.
And you'd go, whoa, it makes that happen. But you, instead of in your brain, you're not spinning yourself. The music makes the energy around you spin, like something out of Harry Potter when they do the port key. Or, you know what you can sort of see it in a movie. I can't think of one right now. But anyway, the whole room changes. And that's what Tom and I found out in the other dimension with the ship, because see, he doesn't know my history or Tom's history.
So, yeah. Do you want to share a little bit about, so that Preston understands, I don't know where we're going to go from here, but
Preston, anyway, I've been working on this.
PJ's been really involved with the ships and the extraterrestrials.
Yeah, I got some. But that piece of music that you were playing reminds me of the Terenzi project when they were converting the output of a radio telescope down to audio. That recording came up with similar noises. I would call it more tonalities than music.
Modality.
It also reminds me of the soundtrack music for Forbidden Planet, which was done by the Barons in the 50s, and we still can't figure out how the hell they did it. Because the technology of the 50s, no way would make that group of tonalities.
Well, that's what people have told me that've heard it. It's what you just said. They're like, Teresa, that's not from you. That's from a ship. I'm like, what do you mean? They say how did you do it? I said, I don't know. I just did it. But even the guys in the room said they've never heard anything, everything I put together. They're like, were you doing that with your brain? Because they were trying to say to you, I didn't see you pick up any equipment. And I'm like, what do you mean?
So what were you playing? What instrument were you playing?
Keyboard.
Can that sound come out of a keyboard? I've never heard anything like that.
I did it again, and I went back for another session, paid for another session, and was able to do the same thing. But I don't know.
They're coming into it. They don't hear us.
Okay, what? Now I can hear you. They come in?
Yeah,
what did you pick up?
Well, what that sounds like to me is generated by digital sequencing.
How's that done?
Huh?
Can you explain that?
Well, it's taking the actual tonalities, the tonality concept, and reducing it to pulse-coded modulation and generating from the ones and zeros in the computer, generating tonalities, which, if it's melodic, becomes music. If it is, something else, then it's tonalities.
Okay, I'm lost. I'm a musician. I'm not a scientist.
Well, I'm going from computer science. I don't know how to bridge the gap.
Yeah. Well, that's what we need to do, but how? It'll open up to other dimensions. I know I've seen it twice, 3 times in my lifetime. I've done it myself. And I had witnesses that day.
So what about this?
They ran away. They ran away. They didn't want to play with me anymore.
Hearing that, I don't blame them.
So what about this program that we're in? So what can we do about it? It seems like it's the program's getting stranger and stranger, like it's degrading or something.
It's actually changing us.
Actually, the computer Cytros is in the process of failing right now. So yes, it is degrading.
So did you get any information with interacting with the beings that you did about, what we can do? Is there anything we can do? Are we just going to die or be victims of this? What's happening?
Well, from what I understand, the simulation started to break down about 250,000 years ago. And essentially, at this point, 250,000 years ago, the center of the galaxy exploded, or imploded, more likely imploded, and there's been this super wave traveling out from the center of the galaxy, taking different solar systems out as it goes. Of course, we're on the edge, so we're one of the last ones to be taken out. And I don't know what to do about the supercomputer. I don't have a clue, and I don't know if anything can be done about it. Because right now, the way it looks like the super wave will be here probably around 2020 to 2023 is when it looks like. When I initially tuned in, it looked like it was September 23rd, 2012. But over the years I've been looking in, it's been slowly going ahead, little at a time, and now it looks like it's up in the low 2020s. And by the time we get there, it may be further in the future. I'm not sure if and when the super wave is going to come, or whether the computer is going to fail completely and everything just blinks out of existence.
Well, I've got my Thoth energy. I've got my Thoth past life to fix it. I've got the crystal. I found the crystal, and I know how to reset it, and it's just a new beginning. So I know what I got to do. I just don't know if I'll get it done in time.
So what are you saying? You're saying that there's, because Thoth, who left us the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and he was the son of Enki, who was the Anunnaki, who, I don't know if you're familiar with all that information, Preston, but you probably are. And my husband is an ancient anthropologist, and he studies Aryan and the Anunnaki information. So to me, it seems like there's some way of, I don't think we're just going to blink out of existence. No,
we can create a new beginning. That's what Thoth did if you believe in the Emerald Tablets, but that's, you just have to choose either to believe or not to believe and then know how to decipher the codes, just like everything is symbols, and that's why we use numbers and computers now. It's just that they're trying to bridge science and religion into what people like me do and how we use it. And the government wants it because power is control. So if if the people in the Ascension Age coming up 12/21/12 at 11/11 Universal Time, if they all want to work together, then all we have to do is convince the people above that that's what we want to do, is save the planet. And then I get to go play with the crystal and reset the crystal again for a new beginning. That's what's called the New Atlantis I've been writing about for 5 friggin' years on UFO Digest.
All right,
trying to put it all together and put the story together. It'll make a great movie if it works. If it doesn't...
Oh, we're living the movie.
We're living the movie. Well, we make the drama down here for all those above, right? We establish that they like our animation, but what we get in return is the next sequence or the next level in the game of life. They call it the game of life, and the military working with them. There's various stories, Preston, and various levels. And I work with all 7 levels, the universe, multiverse, metaverse, xenoverse. And the xenoverse is where I think some of this energy comes from. And then the omniverse and the alpha verse and the omegaverse. Those are your 7 levels. And then when you stack 7 pieces of paper, Preston, on top of each other, those are your 7 levels. Now, everything outside of those 7 pieces of paper are the dimensions that you can walk into. It's sort of like walking off the 8.5, 11 sheet of paper. Boom, you're there. And then what happens, too, is people think they can get into the 7 levels of the paper stacked. And what I did to show them how a wormhole worked back in 1992 when I was in Hawaii teaching astronomy was I took a map of the world and showed them Hawaii, and I punched a hole through it and showed them on the other side was the flip side, and that was Africa. So if you take a wormhole and start in Hawaii, punch it through the earth, you'll be in Africa. So when I used to teach this stuff in what was called psychic awakening classes, we had psychic awakening classes, and it was the Ascension Ancient Mystery Schools. And we have the Ascension Center Hawaii that was established in Honolulu. And that's what I was teaching. And so between you and me and Janet, we can reestablish our webinars teaching all this stuff and create some income if we want to for people to sustain the planet. And we can do that based on solutions, and then I can reset that. It's thought processing. It's what do we choose to create, because we're each individually on a timeline. And then our timelines are threads, just like on the computer, what we put in. So trash in, trash out. So if we're all working to put into Minerva, the main consciousness, and working on the theory of everything, right now I'm working with various levels of universities, scientists, brilliant people, and the Hadron Collider, CERN, and now this one in Louisiana at Caltech Education. But I know funding is tough. Funding money is tough. And I think the reason is that the 7 powers we're changing over from oil to water on this planet, and they want to stay in control. So before we open up the Thoth tablets with the crystal control, we need to make sure everybody's ready to, they want to understand the cosmic world and the 5th dimension and the 12 dimensions with yourself, 13 dimensions. And now they're working on the bubble theory, so when 2 people come together. So we're working just trying to get the kids to understand left brain, right brain makes whole brain, and get them into understanding how to use everything to create a new reality. Now, the old story says the world's going to spin because that's in the Thoth Emerald tablets, which you can download, by the way, on a PDF. Just look it up. Yeah, and read it, but read it with an open mind that you are part of it and you understand it. And then what I told Preston, and you could do it too, Janet, is read it 100 times. And then there's some people you can evoke into that, and the names are there, and then that helps. But we have to get the word out, and that's what all the light workers were created for. Then we can all learn how to do this stuff.
Hey, Dan, let's stay focused on our guest here for a little bit and how we can...
Well, Preston is part of this, as far as I know. Aren't you, Preston?
Of course I'm part of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So how do you do your part?
That's why I have to work through Tabor.
Oh. That's one of your higher consciousness levels in you, right, when you go traveling?
How are you spelling that?
Tabor.
Babor. And what does Tabor look like?
Basically a violet bluish energy field.
Uh-huh.
And so does rock.
Now, Ra is the name of Marduk, who is an Anunnaki. So is that seems to be too much of a coincidence. Are we dealing with Anunnakis?
Oh, tell him my name is Ta-Ra, and hers is Ki-Ra.
Yeah, so Ra has some kind of intrinsic meaning.
There's a Ra sound, like a do-re-mi.
Right, Ra. So anyway, so these beings, so you're saying it'll work through them. So what are you going to do?
I don't know yet for sure.
Uh-huh.
I'm still trying to figure out where the heck this is all going.
One day at a time. That's what we have to do.
True. That's true. One day
I
at a time.
change every day, Preston, and it feels like energy's being compressed. You know, some people, my feet are swollen right now, and I used to never have swollen feet, and I can't find a pill to fix it. I'm retaining a lot of water while I'm going through I've already gone through the change. I went through before everybody because I've done it 9 times already. 3 times I've died in this life physically in the 3D world, like your bear came up with 3 nails, you know. So Janet's had some too. So Janet, I think to answer you is we're trying to build a team of Ra here, R-A. But
right now, at this moment, the Ra consciousness is shut down. I was going to say that Tabor is love and light and peace. That's the God, the Father of Christ. Ra is the God of war. You know, that's the God of Abraham.
Uh-huh.
But love, life, and liberty is the 3 of Thoth.
What is the relationship between Ra and, or what's his name? I didn't write it down. I'm sorry. Ra. Yeah. What's the relationship? Are they in some kind of relationship to each other? Are they father and son? Are they?
They're all master programs in the operating system of the computer Citrus.
Uh-huh.
And you can look at it that the Tabor side is love and light, and the Ra side is fairness and power and that sort of stuff. I think it's all coming out of whatever group 10 million years ago originally built the freaking computer.
Well, see, I go back 2,600,000,000 years in my mind.
Well, what was the one?
I would say the computer is at least that old.
Yeah, this is, I'm going to, while you're talking, I'm going to pull this book that it's called the Gaia Project. And I believe...
If he's working on the 10 million out of 2,600,000,000.
It's a subsystem of an it's a subroutine of an even greater computer. It was called the Gaia Project. And this guy who was told he only had a couple years to live went into intense meditation, and he accessed this program as well. And so there's too much coincidence here. And then his last name was Hui, was a Korean fellow. I'm going to see if I can find this book while you're talking. He's died since that. He managed to get this book out. But he said that it was a computer program, I believe it was 10 million years ago, and then they closed the system. And they were creating a super virus which will accelerate consciousness throughout the universe after this period ends. And he was claiming it would be 12/21/12, and this book was written many, many years ago. So anyway, it's an interesting correlation on this theory.
Well, yeah, you got the date right, but then the Mayan, you know, they've got their thousands, their step up in their levels. So apparently it all works together. Do you get a reading at all, Preston, on 11/22/12? That's the harmonic convergent started 11/11/11, and it got back in, was it 97? You remember the harmonic convergence?
Yep.
I think that was in 89 or something. That was in the 80s.
Right. That's when that started. That was part of the program, though, because see, too many people got it. We didn't even have computers, Janet, and I got it, and I was in Hawaii. The girls, Solara was working on it in North Carolina, I think. Anyway, the history, it's a repeat of that same song. You know, it's sort of like the Beatles and Michael Jackson and all the people picking up on it, but it never gets fixed. And my part ties in with the Philadelphia and the Montauk experience, too.
So tell us how this ties the Philadelphia experiment and Montauk.
As time gone bad, they crossed threads. The two 25 and 50-year portals. The dimensions in time, it's just like with this music and stuff, I feel like this is part of the what we're doing in the program to fix it. And we get enough people enlightened as light beings. It's in those tablets, that's emerald tablets. And it's working with the Bible concept, too. And then, like, was it Preston saying, when those guys come, it's all over with, it's never good? Was that Preston that said that? Or was it...
Preston, what did you say?
Trent. When they show up, it's never good.
So, was that in this show? I must have missed it.
Yeah,
Are you guys there? Let's engage Trent and Preston a little bit more. We got 15 minutes left. What would you like to share with us, Trent, Preston?
Yeah, it's really interesting that Korean book that you mentioned, Janet, really correlates with what Preston's saying. And I look for those correlations between levels. Where you mentioned that the same dates 10 million years ago. And that simulation coming from the, as Preston said, the two galaxies can clashing, decided they better run a computer simulation to see who wins rather than destroy this section of the galaxy. And, of course, then who created their simulation and another level above that. So we're back in that infinity loop again, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah, and what I wanted you to talk about, Trent, was the light, because when I had seen the energy that is part of this, whatever I'm about with the music and the vibrations, and I was dreaming about that before the show actually laid down. And I didn't even know you were going to be on the show, and then Janet called me earlier. No, she didn't call me earlier. She told me at the last minute in a car this afternoon, about an hour or two before the show, and which was odd, and said Trent and Preston are going to come on. And I hadn't heard from Aurora, who was scheduled to come on, and then I did, and I couldn't get through to her. She called me twice, I guess, to say she had other plans or something. But the universe is perfect. So you know how light hits, it makes symbols like snowflakes, or I saw infinity squared. You know the infinity sign, and I saw I saw symbols. In other words, when light hit water and reflected on the wall.
Well, yeah, like I said, if you take a simple speaker, lay it on its back, put a flat 8x8 baking pan on it with this small amount of water, 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. Start hitting that water with tones, bounce a laser off it at 45 degrees, and you get all sorts of different patterns depending upon the tones. Now, of course, if you have 3 tones, anytime you've got a triad, whether it's in navigation or in physicality, you really lock things in. That it's so vital there. Anytime you're hitting the pan with 3 different tones, and then you bounce a laser off it, you get amazing geometric patterns that are all rotating, they're moving. If you scan the laser, you get it from every angle. Think at the water, it changes. Bless the water, it changes. Of course, change any ingredient in the water, it changes. Change the atmosphere around it, it does. Or change any of the notes or frequency, it changes. And one thing that's interesting, every time I get the infinity loop, which shows up over and over again, it doesn't simply cross in the center. It comes down to a point, starts again, so you have this little triangle in the center. There's an input well. the
that's what I've
infinity.
seen. Can you explain that? Because what message was I supposed to get from that? Because there was no water in the room, and there was no vibration, and there was no music.
Well, that goes back to Preston saying that ether is a type of water, and we could be vibrating it, or you're just visualizing it. But if you do that pan experiment, it's amazing. We were actually using Ormus water, the monoatomic gold. Got a completely different pattern. It looked like an elongated flame, a triangular, an eye opening in the middle of it, and the whole thing started rotating very slowly, 360 degrees. I mean, this is a fantastic communication device. I'd have everybody in the world doing it because it would take several. Well, it is a liquid quantum computer, and that's the way you link to it. It's funny, back in the 90s, which was before my house fire, anytime I mentioned liquid quantum computer in Los Alamos in the same conversation, my phone tap indicators came on. But that's definitely the way to link to it. It was even a single molecule of water. I've done it down to a very small drop of water. Still got the pattern, which is absolutely, it's amazing. And like I said, every time I see the infinity loop, it's got this input well in it, which...
Well, that's what I had, but where did it come from?
Reality.
It came from reality.
That's what's there. That has to be the infinity loop in the quantum well in Preston's tubes in there. And that infinity loop shows up over and over again. But, for instance, you'll get something that looks like a rectangle that's flexing. You scan the laser, and from the top, it's a scroll.
Yeah, I saw everything. I saw every kind of pattern, and it manifested itself in my room like a being. And then I thought, well, maybe it shrunk. It was about 12 feet big, and it shrunk to 8, 6, and then like 4, and then 2, and then it looked like a pattern on the wall. It shrunk, and it was light, and it was in a room that had no light in it. I was on my computer, and you know how the room's sort of dull, but I traced it to the kitchen to see where the light was coming from, and I saw a spaceship. I shouldn't tell you this online, but out the kitchen window. So they wanted me to know about this.
There's definitely a race of beings that are just geometric form that's consistent, constantly changing to communicate. I've seen that too in Vision type quest. And when I do it with water, physically, with that laser bouncing off, and you can get a $6 laser, a cheap pan of water. I have my little portable device. I've got a $3 keyboard in it. I can't get 3 notes at once, but it allows me to show it. I've had very expensive keyboards that don't hold the frequencies tight enough, because if there's a variance at all in the frequency, the pattern changes there.
Can you write that down for me? Can you write that pattern down like you're baking a cake? I've got to start at understanding at the human quantum level with words and baby steps so I can teach other people, because this is going to lead to teaching people about all the other dimensions, working with extraterrestrials. And they only give me a little bit of...
everybody just make the machine. And like I said, originally when I did it, I had a cheap stereo, $8 stereo or something. I laid the speaker on its back. Everybody I was... as I told you, I want to work with sound and water in tubs to put you in. I'm familiar with I'm trained in bioharmonics, so if we record your voice and you're missing a note, well, that's a note we want to put in the tub of water. And everybody wanted to see the cymatic patterns, I said, would appear in the surface. So when I just said, okay, I'll flip a speaker over, and, I plugged my organ into the input of the stereo and hit a note and said, sure enough, there's a pattern on top of the water that looked like waves and, similar to the metal shavings. And the water said, put a piece of the light in me. And I'm like, well, what the heck? It said, put a piece of the sun in me. I said, what the heck does that mean? And I realized I was gazing off in the distance right through my $6 laser pointer you pick up in a mini-mart, and I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll bounce that and see if it bounces off the water on the ceiling. I'll show my DJ son there's some neat patterns, and it happened to bounce off on the white wall behind it. Here's this beautiful pattern. If you play a single Native American flute note, you get a 4, 6, 8-pointed star, 4, 6, 8-pointed star, 4, 6, 8 points, 4, 6, 8 points, 4, 6, 8 points. So you were psychically accessing what anybody can do with a pan of water, a laser, and a speaker, presuming they have an input, like I say, a microphone with a solid note. Because you have to play the note or the notes for a minute, and the water actualizes to the pattern. Then you change
this physically
the note.
appeared in the room. I don't know that I was accessing it. I traced it back to a spacecraft out my window.
So
I thought
you're looking into another dimensionality where that's a form of communication. But at least making this little device, everybody can see what either you were shown through the beings in other dimensions or access.
Well, yeah, because I didn't know what it was. I knew it was communication. I even called and talked to Dirk Vanderploeg about it for an hour and 5 minutes, $46 worth of U.S. currency, because I was so impressed. I had to tell somebody, and I didn't have anybody that would believe me. And at the time, Janet and I weren't in communication. So
now,
I had
what's
to tell
fascinating,
Dirk.
if you start playing sharps and flats, you get a wormhole. I was at one of the major organizations, and I went to show a few friends that I'd done tape recordings for and knew me, and I turned around, and every scientist in the bloody conference was standing on my bed looking over my shoulder. And when I went into hitting sharps and flats, one of them looked down and said, "You've got an energy field right there, free energy field." I said, "I didn't want to mention that." But playing it with the sharps and flats, all of a sudden 5 or 6 hours have passed. It's like opening up a wormhole in front of a spaceship. You keep getting sucked into it. And it's definitely is something amazing
right, well,
that opens up.
That's your part of this. Then see, that's Preston's got the vibrosound and the engineering thing, but you've got the other part I need because of what you're already doing. I mean, there's no sense in us reinventing the wheel, Janet, but we need to bring these together at one conference. So,
well,
Preston, I would like to work with you because that's what my third-party extraterrestrials, whether you believe in UFO ships or not, they really are real folks, and that's why I'm doing this show. But I'm also on my own personal quest to teach others because I believe this will heal my husband, and I had my throat cut open. I broke my neck and my back, and I lost my voice for 3.5 months. That's how I wound up playing the music and not singing. I needed to heal, and this music came to me, but I was missing my voice notes. So apparently I'm missing some of my vibratory frequencies. And in this lifetime, I'd like to figure it out so I can help others as healing with the healing water and blessing the water.
You can look at a spectrum analyzer, voice spectrum analyzer. If you can't get hold of one, walk into a music store and borrow a full wave guitar tuner that has all 12 notes on it, and talk into it a few minutes and see which notes are missing, and you'll know what notes.
Oh, I've got the guitar tuner.
Many of them only have 6 notes, but then you'll have
the
to be
guitar tuner with 12 notes, right?
Yeah, that covers the full spectrum. So normally what we do in bioharmonics, Dan Kugel does it with bioresonance, is you'll have somebody say, let me explain directions on how to drive to New York City, and then, let me talk about my divorce or my house fire to get an emotional reference, and then you talk about your grandest dream to get a potential resonance, and you suddenly go, you know what? Well, for instance, when I met my wife, or this work first started really early, Sherry Edwards had some abilities that first recognized this type of thing, and then other people followed up on the work with great integrity. And I was very low in D. I was playing a guitar that was in the resonance of D. I loved John Denver, Gordon Lightfoot. The Byrds drop D tuning. I did a lot in drop D tuning. And my wife that I was falling in love with at the time had huge amounts of D in her voice. Nowadays, if that happened, I'd drop myself in a tub of water and fill it with D. So you can see what notes you're missing. If you get
well,
really
I still got to do that for my husband and I. Now, when can we're going to have to get together and do all this and write this book, write all this, because these are simple things to people that know how to do it. But you put all these people in a mastermind group, at least 5 people together in a team. It'll be awesome. And I think that's what
think tanking. Preston's Vibrobread. If you remember, Tesla had a Franklin automobile, and he put 2 rods in the air and he drove it around on free energy. But he started with a Franklin with a gas engine in it that came out of a factory. Well, what Preston's done with this Viberbed is very similar. He started with a Viberbed, but it's no longer a Franklin out of a factory, so to speak. So it's really a quantum leap above that because, that's where you get the physical components to rework it from. So there's a lot going on. And the field effect in this room, even after the equipment, the minute he turns on his the amplifiers and the flux gates, everything clears. That's why you can use this equipment anywhere, and it creates its own atmosphere. It's really spectacular.
We could do a conference. We could bring it to a location to do some.
We need to do some work together. We need to put the whole program together so we can do some healing, and we can play some music that'll heal and record it and give it to people. No charge.
Yeah, it'd be almost impossible to move all this equipment down to a conference. It's and plus we've got an underground pyramid here that we're working over.
But you're in New York, right? So we'll just have to figure that out. All right, well, maybe we'll get you to come back on, and I'd like you to come back on and Preston anytime. We're out of time, but this has been